Okay, good morning and welcome back. And we are about to start part number 5. And so far we have found the spine on the rod. We have filed or ringed out the reel seat handle and we've glued them together. We've marked where the eyes go. We have our small pieces of tape there. I have the tip top on. Everything is looking good. Here is the reel on the rod. Of course, I haven't taken the plastic off yet, but there is I have a nice STH reel. It is the air weight STH. It's a beautiful little reel for a 2-weight line. It fits on there very nicely. You can see how nice that is. Now I'm going to show you how we're going to put the eyes on, and that is very simple. You can go from the very simplest to a more complicated, even using a power wrapper. I don't use a power wrapper myself, but I do have a jig. And the very simplest is we have our thread. I'm going to use orange for the initial demonstration, but all you need is a teacup and a heavy book. And here, this is my book from Dale Clemens, Advanced Rod Building. But you take the teacup, put the spool in the teacup, put the thread inside the pages, and you have yourself the amount of tension you need to actually do the rod build. Now here we have our teacup with our spool in it. We have our book and we have our thread coming out the other side of the book. This is the simplest way that you can wrap a rod. You don't need anything special. The whole concept of wrapping the thread is to wrap the thread back on itself. So when you're doing the first one, you're going to wrap it back on yourself, just like you do when you're tying a fly, getting the thread started. You wrap and then it wraps on top of itself. But when you come to the end of your wrap, you're going to have to pull the thread back under the threads that are existing. So here's what you need to do. You get another piece of thread. In this case, I have this is actually nano silk fishing line. So this is stronger than the thread that I'm going to use. I'm going to take it, I'm just going to put a knot in the end. And this way, as you're working, you're not going to have to worry about folding that thread over to make that loop every time, because you have it knotted and it's going to be there. This nano silk, look at how stiff that is, which is actually pretty good for this process. So we're going to take our thread and we lay it over, hold it with my thumb. I'm going to bring my thread up and I'm going to wrap towards the right. So I'm holding it here, and when I get it, they're next to each other, I'm going to hold the both sections and I'm going to start wrapping, and I want that first wrap to go over the wrap. Sometimes it might slip, but here we go. Now there's 2 wraps on it, and when I get about 5 or 6, I'm going to trim it. There's 3, there's 4 already. It's holding by itself. There's 5, there's 6. Okay, now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to trim this tag end. Now I'm going to continue wrapping. I'm going to bring this up closer to the lens. Now you might see on this side there's a little gap in that thread. So as I'm going, I can just push them over slightly with my fingernail, and that will close them. And then as I'm going, whoop, that wrapped on top of itself. You have to be careful of getting the double wraps. Having a contrasting background is a very good idea, just like when you're tying flies, having that contrasting colored background. So I'm going, and as I'm going, when I'm speeding up, I'm not getting those overwraps and I'm not getting spaces. So I'm going, and then when I get to about, I don't know, 10 wraps or so, 10 or 15 wraps from the end, I'm going to take my loop. I'm going to place my loop underneath the thread, and I'm going to finish my wrap. Then once again, I'm going to speed up there a little bit. Okay, we're going to call that done. Now I'm going to hold the thread tight. I'm going to go ahead and cut that, put the thread through the loop. Now I'm going to hold this tag tight. Take your loop and get that wrapped around my finger, pull that tight, and once I get it in there, 1 or 2 wraps, I can go ahead and I can trim that pretty close. Or the other option, which I don't use, is pull it all the way through. Now this I could let go of that, that's tight. The other option is pull it all the way through and then cut it really close with a razor blade. I'm going to, you see I pulled it under a couple of wraps right there. Now I'm going to trim that off with my scissors. I'm going to take this and I'm going to cut that pretty close to the edge there. Now you can see I have a small tag on there. And the direction that these threads are going is they're coming around and they're coming up over and that way. So when I pull this the rest of the way through, I'm going to pull it away from me. And you're going to see that disappear. And it's going to stay under there. My fingers are slipping on this nano silk. I'm going to put my finger right inside. And there, and the thread is totally disappeared. Now we can look at it, and if we see any spots that you have a small gap, just go ahead and touch it with your finger. You could even take something like your marker and just run it on there like this, and that will fill the gaps in. I usually use my fingernail. And then we have our wrap. The foot would be under there. And this is the easiest method, using the cup, the teacup, and book. Now I'm going to take this apart, and all I need to do is just pull it towards this direction. And I pulled it right apart. So I'm not going to use orange thread on this rod. You can use any color thread. They have a wide variety of threads for wrapping the rod, so you can really customize it to the way you want it. Okay, now here's my jig. And it is really simple. Here we have, it comes with this post, this post. This is a thread tension. Piece of wood across, two pieces going down on the arms, and that on the end, that's just like wooden corner mold, and it had felt in it, and you can see it's wearing off because of so much use. But because of the fact that you're not always going to be able to keep that rod that you're winding in the center. I have all of these different, I put little paneling nails in there so I can run the thread through the different paneling nails to where my eye is going to be most comfortable or easiest to wrap. To use the jig properly, I'm going to put the spool on that one. I'm going to take the thread around this one, and then I'm going to place it in the tension device. And you can, as a screw on top, you can adjust the tension to where you want it. Pull it out to make it long enough. Now I'm going to take my, this is where the stripping guide is going to go. I said that there would be no guides on the butt section, and there we have it. Now I have the mark for the stripping guide right there. So I'm going to take the stripping guide, and I want that double foot on the down side. And when I tape that on, I'm going to tape it only to one side. And you can see why I wanted a skinny strip of tape to mark the eye, because there's not a lot of space between those, between that stripping guide there. Now once you get your eye into position, or your guide into position, I'm going to hold that right on the spot where it's at, and then squeeze right around that foot itself, and that will further tighten it up so that it doesn't get loose. But one of the things you want to do also is you want to think about the aesthetics of what you're doing. So what I usually do is use about a half an inch. I usually keep about a half an inch of thread. So I'll just put that, and we got the 7 to the 7.5. So I'm going to take another small piece of thread, or another small piece of tape, and I'm going to mark where I'm going to start. I'm actually just going to put this on the ruler at the 7.5. And now that, put it on there, and now I can just put it on. Move that out of the way. Once again, precision, yes, but don't be too wrapped up if you're at 64th off. Now, to start, just like I did with the other, with the sample, I'm going to put that, take that underneath, and now I'm going to hold it, and I'm going to start wrapping. I want to get that first wrap over. Make sure this tag end stays to my left. And you can see it coming up on the left. Don't worry if you touch the eye. We got lots of time for fixing it. And it slipped because I let go. And there we go, and I got it started. I'm going to look close at it and make sure that I don't have the loops, and I'm gonna just push the whole thing towards my tape right at this point. Push it towards the tape, push it towards the tape. Okay, now it's on there tight. I'm going to take the tag end and trim that off. Just take my razor blade, cut that nice and close. Now I'm going to move it quicker. And I can see I have one little space there, no big deal. It is closer to the tape. And now you slow down a bit when you reach the foot. And sometimes the foot wants to try to push that thread away. So I kind of help it there a little bit when I hit the foot. There we are. See, the thread wants to push off on at the foot. So I'm going to get a couple, and I have a small space there. So I'm going to put a couple on there, and then I'm going to move my thread with my finger in order to close that space. And now once I get on the foot well, I know it's not going to slip off anymore. I'm going to take my pulling loop and I'm going to place that in there. And I want to keep that pulling loop on the opposite side of the eye. So there's the eye, and my pulling loop is further down. I continue wrapping, and you can see a space because of the pulling loop. When I pull that through, that space is going to close. I'm going to continue wrapping. Then when I get to the end here, you can see it's right there on the end. I'm going to go and give it maybe 2 more wraps. It's not going to, so it's basically almost climbing the foot. Because when I pull it, it's going to slide off that. So I'm going to hold this thread tight. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to trim that. I really need to get myself my other pair of scissors. Take the thread, put it through the loop. I can't see it too good. The white thread with the white background, I kind of lost it there. Now I'm going to hold this tight. Going to hold that tight, and I'm going to pull this through. And as soon as I get that through just that little bit, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut that thread. And I'm going to cut that close, maybe about 1/8 of an inch, not very much more. Now the thread is wrapping, so I'm going to pull this away from me so I can keep all of that under thread under there. And there we have it. Now I have a couple little spaces. I'm just going to run my finger on it. And now I'm going to check for alignment. And there, right underneath the eye, is the mark for the alignment. Now, one thing you do have to do, besides wrapping the eyes itself, you have to wrap the furrows. And you can see there's a little bit of furrow that's not even coated there. So we have to wrap that furrow, and we want to get that furrow to within about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Okay, I'm going to finish the other two, and then I'm going to show you how to put the finish on it, and then I'll let it sit overnight, and tomorrow I could be fishing with it.